Hi, everybody. This is Jose Formoso from App Academy, and today we're talking with Sharí Alexander, a top executive coach down in LA. And thank you so much for being on today, Sharí.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
So, in order to get like a really nice introduction to you, let me read it out so that everybody really knows who you are
Sure.
and how we can connect you to what App Academy does here. So, you learned and studied from CIA field agents, hostage negotiators, and many other masters of persuasion to learn influential communication techniques. Some of your clients include top athletes, TV personalities, and entrepreneurs. And you've also helped people tap into their personal influence, business, and their career influence. And today, you wrote an article for the App Academy blog on the one mental block that's holding people back
hmm
from being a great entrepreneur. And we'll get to that article later. But for now, I want to talk to you. And I'd like for you, if possible, to tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the business of influence, which is a really big business, especially in California and especially now, in the 2000s.
Sure. So, what I focus on is influential communication skills. So, how is it that entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders of all types can tap into the true power that we all have as human beings, which is communication? It's the one skill set that can literally change minds, can change societies, can change the world, and yet it's probably the one skill set that we take for granted because we've been doing it before we were like 2 years old. And so there's so much power in there that we just tend to not dig deep into. And I actually did. So being super nerd and super curious and just having a little bit of gumption, I decided to interview master influencers. And those people include CIA field operatives, like you mentioned, hostage negotiators, con artists, even military intelligence officers, trial attorneys with amazing win records, all of these people who quite literally face life and death situations depending upon how they communicate, what they say, how they say it.
Mhm.
And my job is to take everything I learned from those amazing people, because they're playing in the major leagues, and just bring it down to the minors where you and I sit of, we just want to make some more money. Like, and so, but
Right.
yet those exact same skills that they have, those exact same techniques are what we can do as business owners, as people who want to elevate our careers, to be better leaders and to achieve more in our life, because ultimately we always need to convince people to be
Mhm.
on our team, on board with our project or idea. And if you don't know how to do that, then you really miss out.
Right. So that sounds like an incredible and really fun
Mm.
job that you have.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to start off with maybe providing some examples of people that you worked with. Doesn't have to be specific, and you obviously don't have to name anybody, but I'd love for you to maybe provide an example of somebody that you maybe have really learned from about some of the top influencing techniques and how it actually connects to how they do their job.
Sure. So probably the group of people that I love to refer to the most is the CIA field agents.
Mhm.
Mostly because one, they're amazing individuals. Two is that the CIA and other intelligence agencies around the world focus on the scientific data and field testing these things. So if there's any group of people that has put more effort into this, I mean, there is none. It's those organizations. So with that said, the one thing I was most surprised by every single time when I would interview these people is how, first of all, normal they are. You kind of expect them to have a bit of arrogance to them, or a bit of I know more because I've seen more and done more, because they have. And yet they tend to be, especially the field operatives, tend to be very quiet and patient,
Mm.
and they listen, and they're like, they look like insurance agents, to be perfectly frank. Like,
Uh-huh.
they just seem like normal people. And what I learned most from them is that they are constant learners. During my interviews, they would even ask me, like, well, what do you think about that? What would you do in that scenario? And I'm like, why are you
Mm.
asking me anything?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that type of way of approaching people and situations, quite frankly, applies to everything. So it boils down to that these people, master influencers, are not nearly as concerned with the question, what should I say? They are much more concerned about the question, what do I need to know? What do
Mm,
I need to know about this person? What is influential to them? What are their experiences? What is the context? That is what they are searching for. And of course, within my business, we have frameworks and everything that we teach our clients to help them answer that question more fully. So then the answer to what should I say easily reveals itself.
really interesting. So when it comes to what should you say and what should you do, can you connect that back to potentially, 'cause you are dealing with really, people that have already had a lot of experience, a lot of education, a lot of personal success that maybe are going for the next bump. But like you mentioned earlier, you want, if people are starting out, they could definitely benefit from a lot of this type of advice. So
Mhm.
I'd love it if you could think about somebody potentially that is coming through a boot camp that maybe has switched careers and
Mhm.
that I'm sure maybe are lacking some confidence. Maybe it's an English major, right? That went to a UC university or something like that,
Mhm.
and yet they want to take advantage of all this high earning potential in Silicon Valley through technology.
Mhm.
What are some of the tips that you could provide for that, you know, uh, that potential person that is thinking about that is going to have to go through a really long process to you know, get their skills in, get a new job, and then working inside of that job to get to a higher space? What are some of the things that you talk about?
So the three-step process to influence boils down to observe, connect, influence. So influence is that three-step process, and yet most people just want to jump straight into influence, which is the worst thing that you can do. Again, that's operating from the question of what should I say. So let's go back to step one. Step one is observe. That means pay attention, ask questions, and simply be present with those people that you want to influence at some point. So whether it's observing the business that you want to be hired by, checking out their website, checking out their social presence, a decision maker within the company that you already are in, a boss, your boss's boss. What can you, how can you watch them, learn about them, discover things about them, so that way your message can be more compelling to them? Now, we don't have obviously a whole lot of time on this interview to go through all the formulas and everything.
Sure.
However, one of the best things that you can ask yourself is looking for the influential vibes. That's VIBES. I've got a really extensive blog post on this on the website if anybody wants to dive deep, but the basics are this. You want to be concerned about what do they value? That's the V in vibes. What's important to them? What's their core operating system of what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, what's of interest, what's absolutely useless? Where is their compass, and that's their values. The second is I in vibes, and that's going to be identifier. So
Mm,
they see themselves? What labels do they put on themselves? Job titles, roles in their life, wife, mother, single person, millennial, any of those things. All
mhm.
the way to labels I regularly put myself, as you can see from Doctor Who and Captain America over here, is I'm a nerd. And I'm glad, I love that label. And so somebody that might talk about nerdy things would appeal to me because that's a label that they could observe about me. Third is going to be beliefs. So, what do they believe about four specific things? What do they believe about a problem that you are hoping to solve for them? And if you're looking for a job, you're solving a problem for them. So, what
Mhm.
beliefs do they have about that problem? What beliefs do they have about the solution that you are proposing? I can be the perfect person for this job. So, what do they believe about that? Could you be the right person? Are you qualified enough? Can you validate any of those beliefs, or do you need to debunk any of those beliefs? The
Mm,
third belief is going to be, what do they believe about their role in this particular situation? Do they believe they should be extremely involved? Do they believe that they shouldn't have their hands on this?
mhm.
What do they believe about their role? And then lastly is, what do they believe about you? Do they know you from Adam? Like, Or are
Hmm.
you a known factor or not? Are you a referral? So really diving into those, that's the B. Or next is going to be the emotional triggers. What puts this person in a positive state? What puts this person in the negative state?
Hmm.
There's pros and cons to both. And lastly is what are their secret goals and desires? Now, I say secret simply because it sounds sexier, but really and truly can be stated goals and desires as well. So, what is it that they're achieving? All of us are reaching for something more, want something more for ourselves, our family members, our loved ones, our company. So,
Hmm.
what goals do they have? Now you just align what is it that I have to offer and my strengths with their values, identifiers, beliefs, emotional triggers, and secret goals and desires.
Hmm.
And then there's your influential message. That was a whole lot. I totally get that for your watchers and listeners. Check out the blog article if you want more information and write a comment or something, and I'll help you out. But that's one of the most powerful frameworks to observe about somebody else.
It's interesting that that sounds to me like a great process. And I wonder if you also talk with your clients about using that same process to observe your own process, your own self as you go through your own life and your career.
But
I think, sometimes it's probably we're too self involved in our own careers and our own goals. But it'd probably be great to do that type of self introspection, right? And maybe also ask if I don't know what you think about this, but maybe I'll also ask other people to potentially help you do that for yourself to really help you come up with those for yourself.
absolutely. I mean, you definitely connected a dot that a lot of people don't. And that is when people come to me, obviously the things that they're searching for is I want to enhance my brand, I want to make more money, I want to raise my fees, I want to leverage my marketing, all areas communication and influence. But without fail, every single one of my clients, once we go through the process, at
Mhm.
some point will say, you know, I never thought of this, but just the other day I was talking to my wife and something, 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 and they learn about themselves. They learn more about how they personally communicate, how that's interpreted by the world. And then they learn how to make those adjustments that serve their ultimate goal.
Mhm.
So it absolutely, you cannot, and that's another thing I will say to your first question of what was the things that you learned. Master influencers tend to be, there's always exceptions, tend to be very self-aware individuals
Mm.
that because they are constantly seeking to be in the mind of somebody else, they need to do a lot of gut checks on themselves. So one
Mhm.
of the concepts I often talk about is ego suspension, that you sometimes need to suspend your ego temporarily if the mission is more important than trying to influence somebody that has a different value set than you might. You can't judge that person because they have different values. It's just different. Um, by far, one of the most amazing stories that I learned was a military intelligence officer was in desert, one of the many places, unfortunately, where our military is,
Mhm.
and there was an IUD, and two of the Humvees had exploded, and then they went out looking for they happened to see a person, they tracked down the person, brought him back for very quick interrogation, asking them, are there more up ahead? Like, this is again life
Mhm.
and death, high stress.
Yep.
And the intelligence agent that I talk to is the person that has to talk to this other human being who just killed his friends,
Mm.
who definitely wants to kill more of his friends,
Right.
and doesn't believe anything that he stands for. And yet, they actually had a very cordial, calm conversation. And through that conversation, that man told them, actually, there is two more bombs up ahead.
Wow.
That's amazing. So you have to be able to suspend your ego sometimes, but you don't know, you can't suspend your ego if you're not self-aware enough to
Right.
know that there's a contrast. And yeah, that's another reason why I love what I do, because that's the power of communication is you think that you're learning about everybody else, but you're really learning more about yourself, which helps you learn more about other people. It's a very beautiful cycle.
That's awesome. That sounds. I mean, and that's a really powerful example of how getting information in a way, by really being introspective, you really kind of move forward in your life. In that sense, that was literally a life and death situation. So
Yep.
that's very powerful.
Yep.
Um, Tell me about some of the biggest challenges that young people face today in becoming an entrepreneur. Uh,
Yeah.
I mentioned,
So
yeah, go ahead.
I started my business in my early 20s, and I've been in business for over 10 years. You guys can do the math. And when I started, and you asked the question, well, how do I get found? How do I get noticed? It was very straightforward. So I started out as a professional speaker, and the piece of advice was, well, you go to the library, there's this big book of all the associations, you find out which association you want to get connected to, and you reach out to them. The internet was a thing. I'm not that old, but it wasn't as big of a thing as it is now.
Hmm.
So now entrepreneurs, it's not one direct line of advice. It's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. TikTok is now a thing that I don't understand. All of these, there's still snail mail is still a thing. There's
Hmm.
all of these ways that you can still get your message out there and market yourself. But oh my gosh, which one's the right one? Which one do you choose? And I think where most people go wrong is they really try to accomplish all of them. That they try a shotgun approach through their marketing and messaging, when really and truly laser focus still is king when it comes to this. Choosing one platform, choosing one way to communicate to people, and then you build your expertise around that, and then you move on to the next platform. So it's really, really difficult. It requires a lot of discipline. You will get a lot of advice from people saying, oh, don't waste your time on Facebook because such and such is the next big thing. And shiny object syndrome is difficult. I love all things glitter, so I get it. My eyes just like, what do you got? Like, I understand. And so you have to build a sense of self trust, to trust your compass, to trust that energy wherever it's pointing you, and stick with it, because by the end of the day, consistency, consistency, consistency. If you jump from one platform to the next, or try a different method, or try a different funnel, you won't have enough data and you won't learn enough to be able to really craft the message that's going to make a difference.
Hmm. So I'd say that, so if you were porting those ideas to kind of a specific technology, maybe entrepreneur idea, then you probably think about, make sure that, like you said, you're consistent. So if, say, you're thinking about creating a startup in virtual reality or something, what you're saying then is, if I listened right, that you really need to understand everything that that industry has to do, where it is at the same time, at the moment that you start researching it, research where it's going to go, reach out to all the experts that are out there, reach out to friends that are in that industry, um, right?
Yeah, so I think you're touching on an adjacent point to that. So one is choose your platform, stick with it, stay consistent with that. What you're touching on is, I think, the research aspect of the industry, and making sure you're an expert in your field
Hmm.
from a communication and message standpoint, because that's my area of expertise.
Yeah.
Um, to piggyback off of that idea, I would say you want to get a pretty good range of, again, what are the vibes of investors in that area? What are the vibes of people who already own companies in this area, your competitors? And then all the way down to, what are the vibes of our consumers of this product? Because once you figure out how is it that other people are thinking about this thing that I want to make money from, now you can pull key phrases from them and incorporate it into your messaging. So, yes, talking to as many people as you can to get that full spectrum. But keep in mind, there's not one group of decision makers that you are going after. There are multiple, and each decision
Mm.
maker needs its own avatar, from investors to competitors to purchasers to retailers to, like, all of them have their own specific concerns, specific identifiers, beliefs, and specific goals.
Really great. Thanks so much for that answer. That is clarifying and it's very good.
Hmm.
Um, I was gonna ask you a question before about there's a lot of people that attend App Academy, and I'm just reading this off from some of the questions I have here. Is obviously a lot of the students are high achieving, well educated people that decide to switch careers. Do you know many people through your work that have made a serious career switch, like many of the students here? And if so, what are some of the qualities that help them successfully make that move?
Yeah, man, there's a lot there. So I would say an unwavering belief in yourself.
Mm,
I know that that sounds perhaps cheesy or woo woo, but it's the truth. When you make a big change, as I have, I pretty much shortly out of college, I started my entrepreneurial journey. Then at some point in there, I started another business with a business partner. Then that relationship changed, and so now no longer have business partner. I don't want to be in that company anymore. So now I have to rebrand entirely. Like been through many changes that scared the bejesus out of me. So, with that said, when you make a big change, a lot of people around you are not going to understand it.
mm.
They a lot of people who are especially not entrepreneurs or not entrepreneurially, you know what I mean,
Got
minded.
it.
Um, they don't understand our risk tolerance.
Mm,
They don't understand our need and desire to forge our own way. Human beings tend to be wired for the most part towards safety and familiarity. So when you're breaking out away from that security blanket, a lot of people aren't going to understand it. And so this is one of those gray areas. On one side, you have to have unwavering belief in yourself. On the other side, you still need to be self-aware enough to hear good advice when it comes by. So you got to listen to those trusted advisors that tell you, just a little course tweak, maybe turn 2 degrees this way. And so it's not a black and white thing. It never is, and it never will be. But finding that blend of unwavering belief and still being open to valuable advice, not advice that comes out of fear or scarcity, but valuable advice. And then that's just how you find that course to where you want to go.
that sounds very familiar, I think, around here. I think for anybody that really is starting a business with, in regards to really creating a really strong focus in your life and to try to clear out a lot of peripheral things that can get in the way of that,
And
right?
it's tough because some of those peripheral things are your mom and your dad
Right,
and
exactly.
spouse. And, you have to make the best decision for you and your ecosystem by the end.
I think that that's something that they talk about here at App Academy, which is when they say it's like 12 weeks, it's 3 months of building your skill from zero to being able to get a job over $100,000, and you know that's not easy. That requires an insane level of passion, but literal, quite literal, just hourly, day to day hard work, and that involves 100 hours a week sometimes.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something that anybody starting out in any business probably is really understands. I have a friend that started his own security company here in San Francisco, and he goes beyond even those numbers, and that's difficult for some of his old time friends to say, hey, let's go watch a movie, and he's like, well, I really need to build this
Sure.
uh, this part of my business, and even if it's Saturday at 10 p.m., if that's when he decided to work on that, then as us as the peripheral friends that are supportive
Mhm.
need to kind of understand that. So I think that's a great example. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look at interviews. So interviews are a very important part of the process to get into the tech industry, as we all know, or any industry really.
Mhm.
What are some of the top tips that you have given your clients about doing well at interviews?
So, I think one of the biggest follies, this applies to interviews and to, communication in general, is operating under assumptions. And the worst is operating under assumptions due to fear. and so this is very true in interviews, is for some reason, understandably, I get it, you feel the pressure to have, again, what should I say, to have the right answer. That's not always necessarily the case. You still should be asking questions. If you don't understand something, clarify. If one of the best things that you can do is repeat a phrase back to somebody. So
Mm,
if they say, "Oh, well, around here we use the Accelerator 2000," and you don't have to say, "I'm unfamiliar with Accelerator 2000." You can just say, "The Accelerator 2000, huh?" And then they'll probably elaborate a little bit further. So even repeat phrases with up talk at the end can keep the conversation going. Let them give you the more information that you need. And if you still don't have it, keep asking questions. One
mhm,
of the worst things that people do is just assuming that they understand what, like jumping to the conclusion of, oh, well, I'm supposed to know what this is, so I better fake it till I make it.
mm,
You
mhm.
put yourself in too many precarious situations. And keep in mind, this is true of relationships. This is true of working with clients. This is true of interviews, is assuming, I mean, we all know the phrase, right? So being brave enough to ask questions to clarify. Now, this is a whole other subject, but in essence, this is the world of elicitation. And that's the world of spies. And it's one of my favorite things to teach is how to get people to give you more information without them feeling like they're being interviewed or interrogated. Again, I got to mention the blog because it has years of content there. So go over to the blog, check out some techniques. It's all there.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to. I guess you also did mention this on the blog, and I've seen you talk about this before. It's kindness.
Mm.
Simple term, not so simple to do it in real life, right? It's so hard to, especially again, we're talking about really focused people. We have a lot of things to do all the time, seemingly, even though we have everything at our disposal to make things easier. It seems that we have less and less time to listen to each other, to have thoughtful, kind conversations to other people.
Mm.
So, you say that this is a very important personal quality that can affect your career.
Mm.
So, again, for these people that are watching this that may have just graduated from this boot camp or anybody else in the middle of their career, um, please explain what your perspective is on the importance of kindness in a career.
I love that you asked this because this is one of my favorite topics I don't get to talk about too often. So, kindness. Um, as high achievers, we are gold medalists at self criticism.
Hmm.
I mean, we do it 24/7. Even in our sleep, we're critiquing our dreams or whatever it is. And there's two phrases that come to mind in around this concept of kindness that has made a big difference in my life. The first one is you cannot um not struggle, you cannot punish your way to success.
Mm,
Meaning you if you hate every step of the journey, then once you reach that financial goal, you broke your first million, you bought your dream house, whatever that is, you're still the miserable bastard that you started out as on day
uh-huh,
one.
uh-huh.
I don't know if you and your other viewers have discovered this, but life is freaking short. It ends way too soon. I don't care if you live in to be over 100. So why are you punishing yourself during the journey, which is the vast majority of what we do? The goal is a fraction of our life. The journey is the biggest part. So why would you choose the pain, frustration, criticism every step of the way? I get it. It's difficult. It's much easier to be mean to yourself than it is to be kind to yourself.
Mm,
But making that choice to celebrate the small wins, to give yourself a self high five, to appreciate your work as you get your reps in towards this goal makes you not only live a better life and a happier life, it makes you kinder to yourself and therefore kinder to others. And then so once you're kinder to yourself, now let's talk about being kind to others. people are dumbfounding. They do things that we don't understand, and it's frustrating, especially when it works against us. And yet, it's also true that of every single person, if we had the capability to jump into the TARDIS over here and go back in time and watch their life, it would make sense how they came to this action, they came to this decision, because nothing happens in a vacuum. We are the result of a series of events and decisions and traumas and everything. And so, if we were to understand someone now, this mean spirited, harsh, I mean, of course, there's always extremes, but still, just keeping it in our sphere,
Hmm.
you understand those things. And now, through understanding, you can have a little bit more compassion, a little bit more kindness. This is not to say that you should let people hurt you or step over you or anything like that. It's simply to not react in our primal mode of fight when that slight actually wasn't intended to be a slight, and all those misunderstandings, all of that. So, with that, as we are dumbfounded by people and things that they may say or do, I turn to a phrase that is from a Patton Oswalt stand up. And it's a phrase that apparently his wife, who passed away, used to say all the time. And it's, the world is chaos. Be kind.
Mm.
We are all living in chaos. We're all scared. We're all afraid. We're all hurt. We're all wounded. Just choose kindness for yourself and others, because the world isn't fair. It's just not.
But what do you say to somebody who is, moving up at a Google or an Airbnb or some of these other companies that are, very focused, and there's a lot of competition, uh, kind of embedded into the fabric of the very company that, just because they're, I'm sure 20 different startups that were thinking about, let's create an apartment type software that'll help you get an apartment in Italy or something like that. So a lot of the people that started those types of companies, they set that up within their company, and maybe, and this is true because I've lived in the Bay Area for about 20 years, but I feel like a lot of people are maybe trapped in the competition and might be afraid to be kind, because they might feel like the executives might feel like they're not strong enough or tough enough. What do you say to that?
So this is a perfect example of beliefs. And I want to point that out for the viewers, that there is a belief that you just shared in what you just described. And the belief is that competition and kindness can't go together. And so that's a belief. That's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily false. But through what, just listening to you, that's now a belief that I would have, my little antenna would, an influence antenna would go up and say, is this a belief that I should or could validate, or is this a belief that I should or could debunk? So
Mm.
now, just to answer your question, I am not of the belief that kindness and competition cannot coexist. I believe that they can. I believe that seeing sportsmen, athletes at the highest level, yeah, they're competitive, and yeah, they will go for the goal, but they still can be kind. And I think that that's true in Silicon Valley, in any industry. You still have the option to choose kindness no matter how competitive it is. There's competitiveness does not equal ruthlessness. Ruthlessness is ruthlessness. Competitiveness is simply we're all trying to reach a goal and let's see who wins. But
Hmm.
when you reach the finish line, or even if you don't, you still can be kind.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, because it also reminds me of what a lot of some of the major founders of Silicon Valley, and it kind of connects to your idea earlier in the interview, which was the use of language and understanding, what you're talking about. You hear somebody like Steve Jobs, and he was considered to be this ruthless individual in many ways.
Mm.
So a lot of people coming up believe that they have to be like Steve Jobs in that particular way, but it doesn't mean that maybe what worked for him would work now. It's a different time. Maybe the way that he was wouldn't work now because there's different expectations, right?
Right. And that goes to the article that is up on your guys' platform now, and that is comparison avoidance.
Aha.
Comparison is dangerous in general, but if you are wanting to be like somebody else, you're already on the back foot because you cannot be somebody else. Your real magic, your real power is, how can I enhance the best parts of me? How can I bring more of myself to this? Because if you're trying to be like somebody else, you will always fail because you won't. And when it comes to comparison avoidance, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point,
Hmm.
when you're trying to not be like somebody else, you still have that person in your mind as a mile marker. They are still a reference point. They shouldn't be a reference in the world that you're creating around you. It should come, I mean, again, I know it sounds a little woo woo, which is weird for me because I'm not super woo, but when it comes to entrepreneurship, you have to have these internal checks for yourself. You have to be able to have these grounding conversations with yourself, because it's very easy to get pulled all different directions, and now it's just pieces of you that is trying to go towards something, and it will not work.
Interesting. Yeah, let's go into the article a little bit. So you mentioned, so this was the for viewers that are watching this, you can go to blog.appacademy.io and you can find Sharí's article on the one thing that, let me make sure I have the right title. It is the one bad thought holding back entrepreneurs. And do you want to get into it a little bit? Why did you decide to write this article? And what are you trying to get across to people from this?
Sure. So the article comes from a lot of conversations I've had with clients and colleagues. And that is, I mean, I teach the world of influence. And so within my industry of influence, there's a lot of schizoids out there. There's a lot of guys teaching slimy techniques, just teaching things that, like, you don't feel good as a person doing it, but this person said that you're supposed to. So I guess maybe I'm supposed to. And so in my world, as I started my business, I tried so hard to not be compared to those people. I tried not to do the things that they were doing, even though they were strategies that were working. I didn't want to jump into email marketing right away. I didn't want to jump into making videos the way that they did, or webinars the way they did. And so as a result, I wasn't doing email marketing. I wasn't doing webinars. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't doing that. And I am not the only one guilty of this. Plenty of my clients, when they ask me, oh, I want to put together this thing, but I don't want to come across like insert person here. I hear the name Gary Vaynerchuk a whole lot. I just don't want to be like Gary Vaynerchuk because he rubs them the wrong way. Okay, fine. There were people that would love to be like Gary Vaynerchuk. I have no judgment here. There's tons of people that they will say, I just don't want to be like. Well, as a result, that person that you don't want to be like doesn't give a flying fuck. You said I could curse on this. I'm just letting you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't give a flying fuck what your worry is, because that person is still out there on the megaphone doing what they do. You not wanting to be like Gary Vee is not stopping Gary Vee from being Gary Vee and getting the money that he does and doing the deals that he does. Um, and so, but you are sitting back, not moving forward. You're procrastinating. You're creating all these mental blocks because you don't want to potentially be viewed like so and so, whoever that is for you. And that kind of comparison avoidance holds you back, holds back good entrepreneurs. And I mean good entrepreneurs because these are the type of people that are worried about it, that they're concerned about their image. It's the egotistical megalomaniac narcissists who do not have these conversations with themselves, who will use any technique, who will do whatever it takes.
Mm.
And so who are you serving? You, out of comparison avoidance, are now leaving the only voice, the loudest voice, to be the megalomaniacs, and you're silent. Who suffers? Your marketplace suffers, because now they only have those people to turn to because you didn't want to be compared to that person, and now they don't have the information, the help, the service from a good person like you. So it came from so many conversations I've had with people about it. And I would love for people watching this to do a gut check and ask themselves, what are the things that I know I should be doing, but I have been holding back because so and so did it and it rubbed me the wrong way?
Wow, that's really interesting. Really powerful because I think I'm sure a lot of us do this, and maybe sometimes even I think that what you would describe as consciously, but I'm sure that a lot of this stuff can also be unconscious. Because I don't want to be that way. I don't do this, blah, 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 blah. But then you might be missing out on an opportunity. And maybe if I'm understanding it right, I could probably do something like this in my own way that serves my own values, that makes me succeed in my own way, that could potentially be in an external way even better than that comparison, right?
Nailed it. Exactly. Because the beautiful thing is once you find your own voice, once you find your own way, once you find the perfect way for you to do it, and it starts to take off, next thing you know, now you start seeing copycats of you. And that's when you know you really hit on something special. And for those of you that once you hit that spot, I want you to remember, because I've been in that position and it scared me. I was like, oh my God, they're taking away my special thing. They're copying me. Don't worry about it. They will still never be able to have the unique imprint that you have. So
Hmm.
again, that comes back to that unwavering belief in self.
So let's bring that back because I think that's such a powerful idea. Let's bring that back to and take it away from the executive suite and like really thinking about people starting out in the industry, in any industry, even though this focuses on the technology industry. But what would you say? How do maybe on a day-to-day basis, uh, regular people how can they implement this sort of comparison avoidance, rejection in a day-to-day life when they are starting out, trying to learn a new skill, trying to move on to maybe get the next great project that could really help them move up in their company.
Yeah, I get that. It comes down to the other thing that we were talking about, and that's kindness. Just be kind to yourself on the journey. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to go left when you should have gone right. You're still learning something. You are a student now. And for a lot of us, it's probably been a really long time since we've been an active student. And that learning process is you take a few steps, you trip, you fall down, you try again. But being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I did this and that. And okay, great. So how long do you want to waste energy on that? Do you want to waste an hour? Do you want to waste a day? Because most people waste weeks, months, years. So it comes down to just being kind to yourself as you're learning, as you're doing something new.
Hmm. Cool. Thank you for that answer. Let's talk about. We probably have a couple of questions left. One that I wanted to explore was you talk a lot about ideas. Your work is with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of creative people.
Mhm.
You yourself are a creative person. How do you suggest people? Maybe you can provide some tips about how to find new ideas. Could be somebody creating an app. Could be somebody writing a novel or something like that.
Oh, this is another one of my topics I don't get to talk
Yeah.
about very much. Fun. Cool. So the book, there's one, I attributed this to one book, and the book is called The Medici Effect. I'm so sorry, I cannot remember who wrote it. I feel terrible about that right now. But the concept of the Medici effect is he tracks a number of breakthroughs, like in science or architecture. And if memory serves me correctly, like when there's a very creative architect looking at how this next building would look, should look, instead of looking at buildings and other buildings, he looked to a completely different quote unquote industry or world. And he looked at ant farms and the natural world and how maybe trees, the cells in trees structure themselves, and then found inspiration to bring into architecture. So looking outside of your field of expertise is what fuels your field of expertise.
Mm,
So, for example, I wanted to work with entrepreneurs and do business, but I ended up going to the agency and talking to CIA field operatives and spies, and I talked to hostage negotiators. I never wanted to go into law enforcement. I mean, yeah, I want to be James Bond like everybody else. But besides the movie fantasy, I had no desire. But bringing that field into mine is what created more ideas. I get more ideas in my business by not spending time in my business, watching YouTube videos that have nothing to do about business. I've gotten into looking at photography and filming things, and that has fueled ideas for blog articles on communication that it has never done before. So, being very diverse in what you consume makes you produce better, more focused things on the thing that you're wanting to put out there. I think it's a real big mistake when people just only live, breathe, and eat their world. Like you mentioned, VR, only living, breathing, eating VR. Bro, you got to step out a little bit, because you will find your best ideas outside of that world. Otherwise, it's just incestuous. Like everybody's getting the same information and feeding off of the same information. Well, great. No wonder everything's homogenous.
I was going to say that sounds like like a potential. You're kind of describing the curated worlds of certain social networks that shall not be named. You know, so
Sure. Yeah.
really interesting. Cool. So find something new in your life, everybody. So let me see if I can find another question that I had. Just
Mhm.
because, I went through your blog and there's so much to talk about. It's really interesting. Um, mm, 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 mm. I guess maybe let's just bring this question back to you. What's something else that you think that we haven't talked about that, from your experience and as a communication expert, that somebody could do maybe this week? Say like they're watching this thing and say, I have so many things to do in my life. I have so many potential sources that can help me. What is something doable that could help me be a better communicator in my life or in my career?
So I would say, and it kind of ties into how you frame that question as well. So the thing with influence isn't just communication. Influence is communication with a goal, meaning you can be a phenomenal communicator. You could understand everything that I'm saying and take it in, and I can articulate beautifully. And that means I'm a good communicator. But if there is no action that I am driving you towards, no behavior, no thought, no emotional change, then I'm just communicating, I'm not influencing. But in order for me to influence, I have to have a goal in mind. This is where most people miss the mark. They either don't have a goal at all, or their goal is framed around the concept of what they do not want. I wish my boss would stop calling meetings 10 minutes ahead of time. I really hate it when my coworker stops by my office at noon. Like, people tend to be very clear on what they do not want. But when you ask them, what do you want? They go, well, I want him to stop. No, no, no. That's what you don't want. What do you want? Oh, well, and that's the first time they take the pause to consider the actions, the behaviors that they do want to see. And so the only way to set a goal is to something that you can see, something that somebody can do, something that they can say, or that you can recognize. Trying to stop behavior is not nearly as effective as trying to create or shift towards the behavior that you do want to see. The problem is people just don't know what they want to see. So ask yourself, how would I know that my boss respects my time? So they might say like, oh, well, I want him to respect my time. Great. How would you know he's doing that? I don't know. And great. Now this is part of the thought process, because the more clarity you have around that, now your message can be more specific and drive to that clarity. So when you guys are at home this week, I would start thinking of what are the things that you're wanting to create and change, and then ask yourself, how would I know it happened?
While also being really as much as introspective as you can, right? Really understanding where you are, where you want to go, and um, what you kind of like being real with yourself too, right? About,
Yeah.
about what it takes.
another misconception that a lot of people have is that influence happens quickly. The influence that you notice tends to happen quickly, but the true influential process has lasted much longer than you realize. So again, I'll turn to the CIA. They don't have missions that last like 5 minutes on the street when they grab the person and put them in the black SUV like you see in the movie.
Yeah.
That whole scenario of them grabbing them in the SUV took minimum 3 months to plan. Some of the missions of, hey, there's this really high level person at such and such embassy. We know that they can have access to the information that we need. How can we turn them into an asset? That can be a year, 2, 3 year, 5 year mission. But that timeline, you have to be able to, you have to acknowledge, give yourself more time. I guess that's what it boils down to. Is yes, we would all love to have things yesterday, but having one interaction with somebody and hoping to influence them to hire you for, $500,000 job offer, I mean, it absolutely could happen, and I wish you the best and I hope it does. But the bigger the goal, the longer the timeline.
Mhm.
So work that into your plans.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Shari. This has been awesome, and we hope to see more of your writing on the App Academy blog. And people should check out that article. Again, the title is, I'm going to go into it again. It is The One
Blog.
Bad Thought Holding Back Entrepreneurs. And again, just go to the blog.appacademy.io, and you can also check out Shari's articles and find out more about her at Sharí-Alexander.com. So if anybody wants to send any questions, we'll put it up, and we're going to ask Sharí and myself will be online to answer any questions through text, obviously, on the platforms,
Cool.
if that's possible.
Cool. Thank you so
Cool.
much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, you too.